Welcome, beautiful people. It's time for another BIS-MAS Christmas episode where we spotlight MOCs from across the Bionicle community to give you some inspiration for your own future builds. But of course, because it's the month of December, this episode is purely focused on fan-submitted MOCs that you yourselves submitted to the show. So stay tuned to the end of the episode if you're not too sure how to submit MOCs. I'll explain it at the end. But let's start off with the very first MOC. This is Zarya, Tour of Iron by Serotonin. Now, I just adore this. There's so many older style pieces on this build, and the aesthetic that they help achieve is brilliant. We can see plenty of these ribbed tube pieces. The upper legs have those tubes in black, so does the hilt of the hammer weapon, and then there's also the shoulder design that has those, and there's also some on the torso design as those kind of chest piston things. But yeah, the texture of this is gorgeous, and it's beautifully mimicked by a few different pieces as well. You know, the lower arms and the lower legs, they use this specific piece here, and the sides of it have a very similar texture. And then to top it all off, the finger design also has a similar texture to it. Now, it's beautiful to see so much visual consistency across every part of this MOC, but all of it is being done with different types of pieces. You know, Sarah has just masterfully crafted this by picking out the exact right pieces that share similar designs and looks to them, and as a result, you get this wonderful unified design. I mean, heck, even the mask has a similar texture just on the little area there near the mouth. It's just wonderful. And actually on that mask, I love the fact that this, custom painted mask is in a different non-production Lego color. There's something about it that feels very in line with classic Bionicle sets. To me, it reminds me of Gully Mutter's mask because that was a trans dark blue color, which was a different shade to the other colors that were on the rest of her body. But, it was still a really good fit, and it just kind of made sense. To me, it looked like it was more of a, diver's mask that was being put on or something, so it made sense that it was a slightly off color. So yeah, this more almost chrome color here for the mask, it's still close to the rust socket arm joints that we see on a couple parts of the body, but it's different enough to make it stand out in all the right ways. It's a surprisingly lovely choice that I feel like if you told me on paper that's what you were going to do, I'd be like, maybe not a good idea, but nope, it works very well. So Serotonin, she did a really good job with this build. Over to the next MOC now, this is Tahu the Torch by Bionicle. So this MOC is certainly using the set Tahu Mystica as a bit of a base, but then it's adding on new armor and a few other details to spice it up a bit. And you gotta love a little subtle revamp like this, just adding on some armor and bulking it up a little bit. I remember doing similar things like that as a kid with some of the sets that I enjoyed that I wanted to make even better or add my own personal touches to. I think that's always good fun. But the best part about this MOC is the flamethrower weapon. It's just wonderfully done. The kind of main focus of this piece is that blaster elements that comes from some of the Star Wars Ultra Build sets, like Finn here, for example. And then they've added a few other details around that piece, and it works very well. I think the best addition here is this trans brown canister at the very bottom. Now, this piece is, I guess you could say, a more obscure Lego piece. It originated from some of the early Exoforce sets, and it was this interesting disc launcher play feature which shot out these cool round discs. Yeah, it was good fun and it was a very clever piece, and in this context it's just perfect. Up next we have Cor Hunter, built by local Insomniac. So the builder describes this revamp of Cor Hunter with some additional backstory. So they state the following: he turned into a bounty hunter ever since breaking out of prison, living in the shadows, a bad omen roaming the lands searching for his next bounty. Now, I enjoy this new weapon, some kind of electronic spear. It looks like a nice fit. I imagine it has some sort of energy to it or laser effects to it or something, just with the way it's built with those lightsaber pieces and other elements. But it's a good fit for Cor Hunter. I really do love the fact, though, that they've given Cor Hunter a Raven companion. That's just a lovely addition that fits surprisingly well with the character. And I've always said it, if you can give your MOC some sort of beast companion, whether it's a small one or a big old horse that they ride or something, it's always going to look cool. And it looks really cool here. And now, for those curious, they did provide an image of the torso breakdown without any of the armor over the top there. Looks like a simple little construction here, and it allows you to add some shoulder armor on, as well as some additional armor on the sides of the torso as well. So yeah, very cool. Tahu Nua versus Consumed Aimu is up next, and this is built by Grab a Shrimp 2.0. So a bit of backstory to this MOC, which was written in the email. I'll read some of that for you now. A Makuta plague has taken over, turning anything it touches into a beast-like shadow of itself. Unfortunately, Aimu, now in a weakened state after his battle with Umarak the Destroyer, has succumbed to the plague, turning him into a bloodthirsty beast barely retaining his visage. Due to these events, the Toa have once again been called on. However, upon coming into contact with the plague, it had a different effect on them. Instead of turning them into monsters, it fused them together into more powerful Neo-Toa, the first of which was Tahu Nua. So with all that in mind, I think it was a great choice to include some of those Uniter masks that had that marbled look to them. You know, like we see on Tahu's mask here, it has the translucent colors at the top, but the red at the front. And they've included a few more of those translucent colors all throughout the MOC. And I know, to me, seeing those colors on there, it seems very appropriate for the fact that they've been consumed by that plague that the backstory was talking about. So, you know, nice to see it tying into the story in some fashion. Now, Tahu also has a printed piece on the torso. This is the same torso piece that appeared on the set Skull Warrior. And, you know, obviously it looks very nice on the torso, but when you combine it with this stickered piece that's there on the shoulder armor, well, you know, the colors of both of those match very well, and, you know, adding some similarly colored and similarly stickered or printed elements in this case, everything just matches up very nicely. And it's kind of justifying the use of that printed torso piece even more. You know, it makes it look a little bit less alien to the rest of the design. Oh, and Tahu having the Onawa G2 claws for the hand design? Well, hey, that works very well. Now, this beast-like Aimu is certainly interesting. It's great to see some of that Rakshi back armor in silver on the back upper leg design there. It blends quite nicely with some modern CCBS armor pieces, and I've always thought that Rakshi spine piece is such a good piece to be using for limb designs, whether it's on an animal or a more bestial design like this, or even on humanoids. It just translates super, super well. The next MOC is a revamp of Tahu Nuva, and this is by Brachiosaurus. Yeah, this episode inadvertently became a Tahu-focused episode. It just so happened a bunch of people submitted Tahu MOCs, so it seemed surprisingly fitting, I suppose. But with this revamp here, we've got a lot of light bluish-grey wheel pieces being used all throughout the design. So it's on the legs, specifically the upper legs, and it's also on the torso. You know, those wheels are super helpful pieces for any kind of Bionicle MOC. Anytime people use tires or wheels on any creation, it always looks good. And in the context of this like torso design, you know, when you combine it with those like additional support beams, then you armor it up a little bit with some silver armor and other stuff, you get yourself a really nice torso design. And the rivets and ebbs and flows within that specific wheel piece, it just adds a nice robotic feel to it. The leg design also uses the printed version of that orange CCBS armor shell piece. Now, this appeared on the Poe Dameron Star Wars Ultra Build set, and I think this is such an underrated and beautiful piece. That little bit of extra printing there, it just makes that leg design look so, so nice and a lot more interesting. If that was just a blank orange armor piece there, it would have been okay, but with that little bit extra something, it's just so good. I also noticed that Tahu has one regular hand, but then the other hand is a clawed hand design. Now, the email didn't really mention why this was the case, but you know what? Sometimes a bit of asymmetry is always a little bit interesting and a bit exciting. Also, there's flames on the feet. I think that's fun. You know, it reminds me of the flames on Blaziken's hand, Blaziken the Pokemon, of course. And, you know, sure, they're on the feet on Tahu, so it's a little bit different, but, you know, the idea that that's where the flames come out of the body because of their elemental powers, well, it's a nice touch. So I appreciate them putting that on Tahu there. Plus, he's got the fire kick attacks. That's awesome. Up next is a MOC by Joe Swansis, and this is Toa Ord. It's great to see the repeated use of these large Hero Factory claw pieces in gold. That's just such an awesome and really helpful piece. And it's working so well on this leg design and the arm design, and also as additional ornamentation on the torso armor. And I love how on the arms and the legs they've used 3 of these larger claw pieces to form this, I guess like unique triangle shape. You know, I'm sure just one of those pieces on the arms or the legs would have looked great, but going the extra mile and finding some interesting geometry with a few of those different pieces, well, it really works well. Honestly, man, just finding interesting patterns or shapes that you can create when you repeat multiple pieces in succession like that, it's such a good way to find interesting techniques. So play with repetition, play with patterns, just sort of see what interesting shapes you can come up with when you put multiple pieces together. It's really a good way to build. And hey, you always gotta love a good custom 3D printed mask like the one we see here. What a beauty. We'll finish off now with Tahu Post-Reformation by Wholesome Gadunka 8. Man, Tahu has never looked so good. Of course, this is a revamp of the Tahu Stars set, specifically the version where you get all the different golden armor pieces from all the different sets and put it together to get the gold armored Tahu. And yeah, it's great to see this, final G1 Tahu set really getting the love that it deserves, building it to be, the more typical size for a Toor instead of the small little boy that he was in the Stars set, and then just decking him out with all sorts of ornate and beautiful armor. Now, it appears that a good amount of these gold-coloured pieces have been painted to be this unique metallic gold colour. And to be fair, they've matched that colour decently well to the official metallic gold colour that appears in modern LEGO sets like the Infinity Gauntlet set, for example. Now, whether or not you're a fan of people using painted pieces, you can certainly appreciate the paint job here, because look how close they've matched the colour of that gold to the official gold colour. Well, at least it appears that way in these images. But still, that's not an easy thing to do, to match the colour perfectly like that. My favourite part on this MOC are the improvements to the weapons. Tahu's shield could have worked really well if it was just that gold dish piece, but adding on those weapon pieces and other elements to make it look more regal and impressive, like it's some kind of ancient weapon that's been passed down from generation to generation, that was such a good idea. The sword is great too. Of course, in the original Tahu set, he just had that flame sword piece as all that the weapon actually was. But adding in that little silver hilt at the bottom there and, extending it a little bit and adding more to it, that was just such a good idea. Plus, look at how posable this MOC is. Seeing them in all these different heroic poses here, it really does communicate the personality of Tahu, and this build just captures the vibe of the character so well. So that's Tahu, and that's it for all of these different MOCs in this episode of BIS-MAS Christmas, or more specifically the Bionicle Inspiration series. Now be aware, there's only one more episode left of BIS-MAS Christmas, so you gotta submit your MOCs as soon as possible if you want to be featured. Now, there may be a few extra episodes that I include in the month of December, but I'm not going to spoil too much about that right now, but stay tuned. But yeah, time is ticking, so if you want to see it on the show, now's the time. If you have warriors, now is the time. So if you want to submit your MOCs, you can submit them through the submission email that's currently on your screen right now. Put whatever you think is important in that email and send it my way. If you have any other additional questions, be sure to go to the homepage of my YouTube channel. The pinned video at the top of the channel will explain everything you need to know about how to submit your MOCs. Also, check the links in the description below to see all the social media for the builders that you saw in today's episode, or at least the builders who included their social media in the submission email, but there are a few there, so be sure to check those out. Oh yeah, and you might have noticed that I've kind of been doing daily uploads. Yeah, I'm kind of in a good position at the moment where I'm able to do that. We'll see how it goes. I'm just sort of testing the waters here. There's no guarantee that's going to stay that way forever, but I'll be sure to continue it like that for, I don't know, at least a month, maybe more. We'll see how we go. So yeah, enjoy daily uploads, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how that's going and how that progresses in the future. Any input you can give me is always beneficial, so thank you. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Happy building. Bye for now.